Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to Marketing Mondays. Welcome. Happy Monday. For those of you who have been here before, welcome back. For those of you who are attending for the first time, we are so excited to have you. This week, we are going to be covering another important public relations topic, press releases. And we'll talk about how to craft a press release that gets noticed. So this is an incredibly beneficial communication tool. Think of it as your direct line of communication to news outlets, influencers, creators, partners, competitors, and ultimately the public. So we're going to go over the essentials of creating an engaging press release that not only tells your story, but also compels the media to take action. And you're going to want to stick around to the end because we have some pro tips to share with you from someone who's been in the business for over 30 years. I'm very excited that they've been willing to share their knowledge, and I'm excited to share those pro tips with you at the end. So definitely stay tuned. All right, so I am your host today. I am PJ Overchansky. I oversee the public relations for Uplift and also assist with some marketing efforts. And our other host, Kara Treadway, is traveling this week to see some family, but don't worry, she'll be back next week to present on building a strong brand identity. And then I will be traveling next week. So we'll do a couple of solos and then we'll both be back with you. Oh, also note that Memorial Day, we will not have a Marketing Monday to give everybody time to spend with their family or doing things, but then we'll come back the following week. All right, well, let's jump right in. So what is a press release and what is its purpose? So a press release is a powerful tool that acts as a formal, official announcement or acknowledgement about your business or entity that's targeted at the media as well as your stakeholders. And its purpose is to help you and your organization build not only credibility, but gain media coverage and also enhance your traditional and your online presence. All right, well, let's look at today's blueprint. So the first thing that we're going to go over is determining whether something is newsworthy. Is it worth the time and effort to tell the world about you and whatever great news you have to share? And think about, are you ready for that close-up? If you don't have imagery to be able to promote it, or you're still finishing a renovation, you have to think about whether whatever it is that you're about to promote, are you ready for potential guests and media and everybody to come and see? Next, we're going to talk about local news interests. So, what is local newsworthy? And we're going to also discuss why it's so important to have a relationship with your local news outlets. Then we'll briefly go through the key components of a press release. Then we'll talk a little bit about crafting that narrative. This is where we'll get into more of the strategic communication side of things. And then after we go through all that, we'll share a couple of examples with you. Then we're going to play a little game, like Taylor said, of yes or no. So I'm going to present some scenarios, and then together we'll look at those and determine whether it is press-worthy or not, or maybe not. All right, then we'll kind of review everything. We'll go through some key takeaways. And then, like I mentioned, make sure you stick around to the end. And we're going to share some pro tips from someone who's been in media relations for many, many years. And then you're also not going to want to miss our upcoming episode of Interactions and Attractions, when we actually get to spend a bit more time with our guest, Susan Dozier, who is one of our friends, Uplift friends, and also our guest for that episode. And then we will stick around to answer some questions for you as well. All right, so what qualifies as newsworthy or press release worthy? Is there enough meat, so to speak? Does it have that hook to captivate your audiences? So I'm going to share just a quick story that I think hopefully will add some perspective and kind of help a little bit. So, it's about a group of cavemen. So envision a long time ago, cavemen are all sitting around a fire because they've already discovered fire, and they hear this unfamiliar noise. And so coming over the hills, this massive woolly mammoth, right? So they get after it. Soon enough, they have food for days, maybe even weeks. So they celebrate. They get back in the cave and they draw this image of the woolly mammoth and their success. All right, so that's pretty cool. They've got sort of some communication about it. Now it's a year later, and even though they've already accomplished this great thing, They're going to celebrate the anniversary of this big win, feeding the ominous creature. So think about your news in the same way. First, what are the first three letters of news? NEW. So is it new? Or is it new again? Or is it a celebration or an anniversary? People are always looking for things that are fun, that are relevant, that are recent. It might be that you're launching a new product line, or that you have additional elements of something that's already existing. And then finally, we're, talk a little bit about your branding. Is it unique to you and your brand? Is it something that feels like you, that you want to share with the world? All right. So, those are the first things you want to ask yourself as far as, yes, I think this is worthy of putting together a press release or not. Next, let's talk a little bit about how to earn local news coverage. This is so important, especially in small communities. You really want to form a meaningful relationship. Find out who your news outlets are, whether it's in your town or regionally. You probably already know that, but they can become your biggest ally and influential. So that's one thing that's really important. Next, you want to build trust in the community. So, once you do this, people are going to want to know what you have going on, and they're going to want to invest their time in you. You also develop advocates the more that you form those relationships. Something else that you want to be mindful of is time constraints. The media is moving at 100 miles an hour. They're hyper connected. They're always looking for the next story. They're likely going to be on a time crunch. I know that I've been in situations where a journalist gets approval for a story and they have a 24-hour turnaround. So just be mindful that even though you're busy and they're busy, and it might be, it might seem like it's last minute, that's kind of the way media runs. And so be mindful of their time constraints, because it actually might still be incredibly beneficial for you. Another tip here is to invite the media to be involved. So if you've got a celebration or a special event coming up, maybe you invite the media to either be an MC, or if you're having like a chili cook-off or other type of food contest, maybe they're going to be a judge, or even invite them to bring their crew and do a live broadcast. It's a great way to allow the media to be a part of it, and then you're likely going to get some additional coverage from it. All right, so let's talk about the key components of a press release. And this is super simple, but who is involved in it, what exactly is either happening, or what has happened, where is it, how did it all come about, and then when is it, or when did it happen? And then once you have all those elements together, ask yourself why somebody would care about this. Is it answered in the press release? If you can't answer that in your press release, then you might want to either reconsider it or rewrite it, or make sure that that's incorporated into it, because there has to be a reason why the media would pick it up and also share it through their channels. All right, so we talked a little bit about the key components, and now we're going to talk about crafting the narrative. So first and foremost, keep it short and sweet. Concise is the name of the game. There is so much noise out there, hitting our emails, our phones, our social feeds, really everywhere that we go. So you can't expect someone to be able to digest long content, especially at first. So you want to, keep it short and sweet. You want to make sure that it answers the why. Why does it matter? Or why would they be interested? Is it, the 10th anniversary, 100th anniversary? Is it, the only time something like this has happened? Whatever it might be that would enable them to want to share that story. And then ask yourself, like we mentioned before, is it on brand? Does it, sound like us? Think about when you're trying to make a decision about a purchase. Can you imagine yourself taking this trip, driving this car, wearing this jacket, whatever it might be? Make sure that it's on brand with your organization, your region, or your personal business. And then when you are reaching out to the media, save all the details or the nitty-gritty for the follow-up. The first thing you want to do is just keep it short and concise, introduce yourself, let them know what's going on, why it's so important or why it's something that might be of interest, and then ask them if they're interested. So once you put the press release together and you're reaching out to media, think of it also as like, applying for a job. You don't want it to be a blanket letter to tons of media because everybody's different. They all have different needs and interests. You want it to be personalized. And if they're interested, that's when you can get into all the details of the event and why it's, on for the 10th year in a row and some other things that will be more interesting to them once you've already established that initial contact. And then, of course, incorporate visuals. That is how a lot of us engage in things these days. So, think about what it is that describes or supports what you're trying to communicate. Make sure it's high res. You don't want to take grainy photos or anything that's confusing. It just needs to be clear, concise from the content through the imagery. All right, so I thought I'd share one of our press releases that we put together recently for one of our communities. Montgomery County was featured in Travel and Leisure. And so we put together a press release to allow them to be able to share it. One, it builds credibility, that a media publication like Travel and Leisure, this is digital, was recognizing some underrated destinations in North Carolina, and Montgomery County was one of them, among several others. And so we put together a press release that talked about the who, which is, Montgomery County, and then what, well, they were featured in Travel and Leisure. Where is Montgomery County? So talk a little bit about some of the highlights of that county. How did this come about? Well, this was, part of an effort. Really, they didn't even know I don't think they knew they were going to be part of it, but we included in here, how it came about, and also, or as far as how they were included as far as digital, and then also when and why somebody would about this. Next is a press release about App State being highlighted in U.S. News and World Report. We always want to include the location, who wrote it. Also, again, include that who, what, where, how, and when, and why it's important. All right, so I thought this might be kind of a fun little game. Now that we've talked a little bit about some of the elements of the press release and keeping that relationship with your media. So I'm going to mention a few scenarios. You can either include in the chat your answers if you like. So if there is a grand opening of a new attraction, so say this is something that's never been there before, and all of a sudden you have this great grand opening. Is this something that we would include a press release for? Taylor, I'm going to ask you to help me with the chat. All right, Angela, you get acknowledged, and we love you, and we're glad you're here, and you're correct. Yes, that is an excellent reason to have a press release. If you have a grand opening of a new attraction, or what if you are, have a resort and you're going to bring in a food truck as part of your business, or something, maybe it's an ice cream shop or something that you're opening as part of your entity. It's a great reason to put out a press release. All right, so now envision that you have a resort and you've been selected as a top 10, say top 10 small hotels in the United States in a reputable poll. So say TripAdvisor or USA Today. Yes, Jennifer, yes, Angela, you are correct. Absolutely. Well, what an honor to be top 10, especially if it's in the nation, even if it's in the state. I mean, that's amazing. Anytime that you have that type of recognition, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to let people know that you have been selected. I think there's a way to do it that doesn't sound like bragging. I think just letting people know, also, people who are your advocates, who are your loyal customers and guests, will be excited for you. And I think it's a great reason for that press release about it. It also, just a side thing that I didn't even have in my notes here, but when you become part of something like that, that enables the media to say, okay, now they're worthy of maybe some additional coverage, or even some of the magazines that have more reach. All right, so What if the whole Uplift team decided to attend the Visit NC conference? Is that worth putting out a press release for? And I'm making a face as I'm asking this question, but maybe it's a good thing. Maybe I think it depends on what your ultimate goal is there. I'm going to say generally probably not, unless there is something else, like maybe you're speaking at the conference and it's to a smaller group of media that you want to invite. And then like a seasonal promotion. What if you were offering just like 10% off your out of date jams, or I don't know, something like that, if you've got a little farm shop or something like that. All right, let's see. I'm going to say on a press release, probably not, because you have other media channels like your social media or your website to be able to promote those types of events. So, especially if it's well, yep, exactly, Jennifer. So you're right. That can be, oops, I keep hitting. I'm trying to look at my chat while I'm answering these questions. But I would say like a seasonal promotion, probably not. You definitely have other channels you can use that for. All right, so a new product launch or attraction offering. So all of a sudden you've got some new product line that you're putting out in your big company as far as a press release goes. I'm going to just go ahead and say yes. I think that's a great reason to put a press release out. And then finally, internal report or annual update. Probably not media worthy. That again would be something that you could send out to your shareholders, stakeholders, depending on what it is. So anyway, thank you all for participating in that little game. I think that if you're ever not sure about it, you can always ask somebody in your industry, or you can reach out to us, because sometimes it's right on that line of trying to determine whether it's newsworthy, or you kind of have to think about your overall purpose of that piece as to whether it's worthy of sharing with the media. All right, well, we are about 20 minutes in, so let's go through key takeaways before we get over to our pro tips. But the first step is to ask yourself, is it newsworthy for my stakeholders? Is it something, just like we played with the game, is it something that is worth sharing with multiple people and potentially having that close up? Number two, meaningful relationships with the media. It's so important, even if it's somebody who answers the phone for a publication, you might be able to establish that relationship, and they may be the ones who say, you really need to look at this. They've got something going on there that is worth us putting in the newspaper or whatever. We talked about the components of a press release, and also being strategic with your messaging. Excuse me, keeping it short and concise, and being aware of who your audience is, and tailoring it to specific media if you're going to be asking them to run that story. All right. Pro tips. So, we talked a little bit about local news. That can be a big ally. Ask them to be a partner in one of your events, or like I said, the MC, something that enables them to feel like they're a part of it, and they're likely to be able to share it on their channels. And even if it's a radio station, they may have a big social following. They may get it out, which then also gets picked up by another entity. So you just never know where that big push might come from. But start with your local news. Think big. Your anniversaries, anything that's new, that's recent, that's fun. What's unique to you, what's new that you can share with the rest of the world. And also find new point of views. I thought this was really interesting. Sometimes we're so close to things within our organization or within our town that it may not seem all that exciting. But if you, talk to your visitors, talk to your guests, talk to people who are coming from other areas, it might be something really interesting to them that they've never experienced that you do on a regular basis. That might be something others would be interested in as well. So don't be afraid to ask folks outside of your organization, outside of your town, about different things going on, because they may find it press-worthy. All right, so as you're reaching out to the media, your subject lines are so important. This can be your best bait. So an example Recently, there was the Apple Pie Festival up in Sparta, North Carolina. Western North Carolina is known for their apples, and it's something they've been doing for years. And this past year, they were going to have close to 15,000 apple pies. So, that goes in the subject line. I mean, if there's 15,000 pies, there's a lot of interest. I would, I love apple pie, so it wouldn't take 15,000 for me, but I think that anything that captures their attention needs to go in the subject line. This is another great tip, lifestyle magazine event calendar. So if you've got a special event coming up, think about which large towns are within 2 hours of you. And generally speaking, if it's Raleigh or Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Charlotte, any of those areas have some pretty well-known lifestyle magazines, and a lot of them publish event calendars. So reach out to them if you've got a special event coming up. It may not become headline news in their digital edition or in their magazine, but they might publish your event in one of their event calendars. Excuse me. And a lot of media will also publish what they call like a popcorn story. So if you've got a special event going on, they may include like a full paragraph about something like that that gives you a little bit more attention. Talked a little bit about this earlier, but make sure that you're using compelling imagery. And sometimes that's really hard. You focus so much on the content or the words, and then you forget that you also need to complement it with some compelling imagery. Also, make sure that it makes sense and isn't confusing. So back to the Apple Pie Festival, if you had that in your subject line, if there's 15,000 pies, and then the picture you include is just a crowd of people that looks a little hard to tell what's going on. That could be any special event. You want to kind of bring it in, close up of some delicious apple pie. Make sure that what you're using complements what you're telling people. And then finally, this I thought is another great suggestion is pay attention to some of your low performing posts. So what that means is, go through your social media 1, 2, 3 times a year, and any of your posts, and this can be humbling, I know, but any of your posts that just for whatever reason didn't go so well, it's good to look at those because then you can kind of make sure that you're not using that same type of imagery or that same type of content in your press releases. Our guest Susan Dozier mentioned the other day that when she worked for Southern Living, they would look at all of the covers of their past publications, and any of the lower performing ones they would look at and try to analyze to see why it would work. But they would use that to kind of make sure they weren't doing the same thing. So sort of today's world, you want to look at your social posts, pay attention to those low performing posts, and make sure that you're producing something that's going to be a bit more compelling.